Good afternoon, Belize.
Good afternoon and welcome to our broadcast for today. We just want to enforce or reassure people that we have safe social distancing in the studio, but we would like to encourage you to continue wearing your masks and to practice all the safety protocols with regards to COVID-19.
Yeah.
I am William Neal.
And I'm Marlene Cuellar. And of course, we want to thank you for tuning in to this special live broadcast where Spotlight Initiative goes live. It's actually World Humanitarian Day.
And that means that as long as you're a human, we're celebrating you today.
That's right, but more so humanitarian workers that have been killed and injured in the course of their work. And of course, this is a time where we especially think of the many frontline workers here in Belize and across the world who should be celebrated all year round, but especially today.
Generally, when we discuss this issue of humanitarian workers, we think about wartime, you know, but actually we are in a war of sorts, where we're looking at the war against COVID and its spread. So we definitely want to thank all our frontline workers, as you said before, and to celebrate every person who puts their life on the line to help other people.
And today, specifically, we're going to be talking about Spotlight Initiative. Now, you may be asking, what is the Spotlight Initiative? The Spotlight Initiative is a global multi-year partnership between the European Union and United Nations to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030.
It is the world's largest targeted effort to end all forms of violence against women and girls and represents an unprecedented global effort to invest in gender equality as a precondition and driver for the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals.
So the Spotlight Initiative is working with governments, civil societies, the media, and other partners to eliminate all forms of violence against women and girls by 2030. And that is exactly what you will see here.
Today we will have special messages from the Prime Minister of Belize, the Undersecretary of the Undersecretary General speaking on behalf of the United Nations, messages from some of the members of the United Nations Belize country team, the Resident Coordinator's Office, UNDP, UNFPA, and UNICEF.
And that also includes civil society organizations who are partners, youth, and we'll also have special performances. We got the National Dance Company who will be doing a special piece, and others. It's only going to be 2 hours of your time, but 2 hours that we guarantee you is going to be worth it. We'll hear what the commitments are, what Spotlight Initiative plans to be able to execute along with all these partners over the course of the next 3 years, and how it's going to make an impact in changing the situation of violence that we see within families right here in Belize.
But we don't want this to be a talk shop. We want you to get involved. Leave questions and comments on the Government of Belize Press Office's Facebook page under this live stream, and during our social media check-in, we will be sure to answer them. Now, are you ready?
All right, let's watch as the Spotlight Initiative goes live.
Violence against women and girls is unacceptable. And yet, all over the world, family violence is happening. Now, in every community, rural and urban alike, and in every country, including Belize. Domestic violence, violence against children, and sexual violence against adolescent girls and women. Under COVID-19, the threat of violence increases as girls are kept home from school and families are locked inside together. We can no longer look away. We must lead the way, all of us. And by joining the Spotlight Initiative, Belize is showing its commitment to doing exactly this. Spotlight is a global movement. It brings together governments, United Nations agencies, civil society organizations, and the private sector with communities to end family violence by 2030. Together, we are designing and implementing solutions. We're strengthening laws and regulations. We're investing in prevention and in protection, counseling, and services for victims. Most of all, we're changing behaviors. We must make violence unacceptable in all its forms. At UNICEF and across the entire UN family, we're committed to working with Belize and our many partners to end the scourge of violence and to stand with women and children across Belize and around the world. Let's work together to end violence by 2030 and give every child everywhere the gift of a better, safer future.
Empowering women and promoting gender equality is crucial in accelerating sustainable development.
Ending discrimination against women and girls is not only a basic human right, but it also has a multiplier effect across all other development areas.
Together with our partners and the global community, we put gender equality at the center of our work.
Globally, more girls are now in school compared to 15 years ago, and most regions have reached gender parity in primary education.
Women now make up to 41% of paid workers outside of agriculture, compared to 35% in 1990.
The Sustainable Development Goals aim to build on these achievements to ensure that there's an end to discrimination against women and girls everywhere.
Sexual violence and exploitation.
The unequal division of unpaid care and domestic work.
And discrimination in public decision-making.
All remain huge barriers.
Ensuring universal access to sexual and reproductive health and affording women equal rights to economic resources such as land and property are vital targets to realizing this goal.
There are now more women in public office than ever before. By encouraging more women leaders across all regions will help strengthen policies and legislation for greater gender equality.
Gender equality is one of 17 global goals that make up the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is crucial towards progressing to our decade of action.
By directly empowering women.
And by bringing a gender perspective to all development work.
We can build a more equitable, sustainable future for all.
Belize, like the rest of the world, currently faces a pandemic of staggering proportions. It has upended things as we knew them and turned our entire existence upside down. Understandably, all our energies are focused on what is literally a life and death medical and economic struggle. Obsessive as our preoccupation with the pandemic necessarily is, though, we must still find time and resources to devote to the fight against another huge pre-existing scourge. Gender-based violence, violence against mostly women and children, has long haunted us, and so dire a phenomenon it is that no other plague, not even one as unparalleled as COVID-19, can be allowed to move it off our radar. Gender-based violence is a human rights violation rooted in gender inequality. It transcends borders, socioeconomic statuses, race, and culture. It is a blight borne by all levels of society. It imposes extreme psychological and physical costs on families and undermines national development everywhere. The World Bank estimates that globally, 1 in every 3 women will experience violence in their lifetime. Furthermore, in just this past year, 1 billion children aged 2 to 17 have suffered physical abuse and/or neglect. In Belize, over 2,000 instances of gender-based violence and over 1,000 child abuse cases are documented annually. In the main, these are within the family setting. As a matter of course, the government of Belize remains committed to strengthening the legal, policy, and institutional frameworks that address gender-based violence in all its forms. Over the years, we have been regionally recognized and our interventions hailed as best practice models. These include the National Gender-Based Violence Surveillance System, which facilitates effective documentation of cases, and the Batterers Intervention Program. Our country has been one of the first in the Caribbean with 3 gender-based violence action plans to anchor multi-sectoral response. The coordination of the national effort is also firmly underpinned by our revised national gender policy, which seeks systematically to address gender inequality and inequity. We have therefore passed legislation to protect against domestic violence, sexual harassment, human trafficking, and the commercial sexual exploitation of children. We have amended, as well, the sexual offences provisions in the Criminal Code as a further demonstration of Belize's commitment to these issues governing international human rights norms and standards. Reducing and ultimately eliminating gender-based violence in our society is an undertaking that requires the commitment of each and every citizen, including, and perhaps especially, men. After all, men are by far the majority perpetrators. They therefore have a pivotal role to play in dismantling the organic and socialized behavior that lies at the core of the particular cancer that is gender-based violence. In this regard, there is undoubtedly much, far too much, work left to do. That is why Belize is extremely pleased to be a part of the Global Spotlight Initiative, the world's largest targeted effort to end all forms of violence against women and girls. It is an initiative that comes not a moment too soon and will provide funding and technical assistance for several of the activities enshrined in our own national plans. So today, on behalf of the people of Belize, I express appreciation to the European Union and the United Nations for their work in helping to chart this newly expanded course. It sets the stage for a global leadership call to arms, for a redoubled unity effort against this blot on our civilization. The right to live free from violence is a basic, inalienable human right, and it is one that cannot continue to be denied any longer to any person, anywhere on this earth. Thank you.
Dear friends, I'm greatly honored to meet you virtually today from Brussels at the launch of this very special program, Spotlight Initiative in Belize. Gender equality and women's empowerment are not simply big words for us in the European Union. It is one of our core beliefs and values. This is why the EU just launched a new EU gender strategy, and we are working on a gender action plan which will guide our actions not only within the EU, but also in our relations with partners all over the world. Some statistics does not make us proud. Women continue to be overrepresented among the world's most vulnerable groups, since resources and power remain highly skewed towards men. Looking for answers, we in the European Union teamed up with the United Nations some 3 years ago to launch a new action against the most prevalent forms of violence against women and girls. We invested an initial global commitment of 500 million euros. But more importantly, we hoped this action will raise awareness of all, will get attention of the decision makers, and start a global movement in support of women and girls. We should not be talking about this violence in the 21st century. We looked for partners willing to take on the challenge and found a committed one in the government of Belize. With the COVID-19 crisis, we observe a documented upsurge in domestic violence against women and children, which makes our efforts and the Spotlight Initiative ever more relevant. Eradication of all forms of violence against women and girls, family violence above all, cannot be solved by a single person or one organization or a country alone. Collectively, all of us here today, we are fighting to end the scourge of violence against women and girls. We need the government, together with civil society and local authorities, to pull in the same direction. We in the European Union and the United Nations will stand by and support this effort. With Spotlight Initiative in Belize, we want to contribute in making this beautiful country a better place for a woman and a girl of every ethnicity, where she realizes her full potential in a violence-free, gender-responsive and inclusive environment, and making the family truly safe place. For the Spotlight Initiative to make a transformative difference in the lives of women and girls in Belize, we count on its government. As various state institutions will advance to implement this project, let us remember, why are we here today? To put people, the most vulnerable of them, women and girls, at the center of the program. Our success will be measured by them, by the difference we make in their lives. Engagement of civil society organizations, particularly youth associations, women's rights organizations, and those representing vulnerable groups is critical. In this Spotlight Initiative, CSOs are not only implementing partners. They are the eyes and the ears on the ground, but they also have a responsibility in the governance structures of the program. They are part of the National Steering Committee. Belize has already started the fight against gender-based violence. Let us use Spotlight to scale this up and continue to walk together on this journey to eliminate violence against women and girls. Violence is not irreversible. It has a solution. It lies with me, with you, with all of us. Belize is a melting pot of cultures, both Caribbean and Latin, and could be an inspiring example to follow in the fight against violence against women and girls. I am a believer. Show that you are with her.
There's a serious issue in Belize that people are not talking about. To change this, we need your help. Many people have heard of the term domestic violence or family violence. We see it on the news or on the streets. Sometimes we even know someone who is suffering from it, but we don't realize how it affects them. Family violence can affect any member of the family, both immediate, nuclear family members and extended family members. Sadly, most of the time, it's women and children. Family violence is happening right now. This is unacceptable and we need to end it. The Spotlight Initiative aims to do just that. With everyone's help, we can bring violence into the spotlight, especially violence against women and girls. To do so, we must revise and improve laws and policies, create a culture free of violence, change attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs that foster violence among schools and communities, improve access to quality services that can help anyone affected by family violence, ensure that data is of higher quality and that it's more accurate and accessible to inform laws, policies, and programs, promote strong and empowered civil society and women's movements. Any form of violence is unacceptable. Stand up, speak out, join us. Let's work together to end it. Become a part of the conversation by visiting spotlightinitiative.org.
It is an absolute honor to have this conversation with you today.
So let's start off by just telling me a little bit about S-Clan and its history.
S-Clan didn't happen overnight. I recall attending a UN General Assembly where I sat on a panel for Every Woman, Every Child, and Every Woman, Every Child is the brainchild of the former Secretary General. I was thinking, like, this light bulb went off, and I was thinking, well, maybe this is something we can perhaps do in the Caribbean. We hosted a conference on adolescent pregnancy, a regional conference in Belize. I quickly realized that we all face all of these same issues, and it was really then that I started thinking, well, we really should look at every woman, every child, but I still wasn't sure how to make it work for just the Caribbean. My office, Belize in general, has made some strides in addressing violence against women. I recall in 2014 when we wanted to make a real impact on Belize countrywide, and we launched the 20,000 Strong campaign. Imagine a Belize without women. It was for our women to know their power, to know their influence, to know their significance. We've also done a lot of advocacy work, done a lot of campaigns with the female national football team. We have taken over the 16 days of activism. One of the important things that we have incorporated in the 16 days of activism is getting testimonies from survivors. I've also co-written two books. My Body is Precious, which addresses knowing your worth as teenagers, and for young children, Good Touch, Bad Touch. One of the events that I found enlightening is going to the schools and speaking to our young girls. If one person is able to make a difference in their lives because of us engaging them through school rallies, then we've made a difference. For me, the Equal Opportunities Bill is so very important, and that's why I lend my voice to that bill. We all can make a difference. We all need to use our voices to influence change. Change won't come with one person. It won't come with two. It will take all of us.
That I'm being joined by Ms. Jacqueline Dragon, Executive Director of the Spouses of CARICOM Leaders Action Network, S-Clan. We want you to tell us a little bit about your project entitled Engaging Men and Boys to Advance Gender Equality and Prevent Gender-Based Violence.
We're very excited about this project, and I would like to begin by actually thanking the Spotlight Initiative for supporting this project and for supporting S-Clan. S-Clan main priority of work is engaging men and boys for gender-based violence. So this is an important project for us to continue. So reducing gender-based violence is one of the S-Clan's priority areas, so this fits in perfect with our work for this year. I also would like to thank our partners for this project, the Special Envoy for Women and Children and the National Women's Commission. This project is very special because the men and boys will be working on two themes: understanding the dynamics of gender and violence within their own personal lives and their community. At the same time, they will be introducing tools and strategies to be able to do, work on preventing gender-based violence in their own lives. So it's basically two-part, as well as bringing the awareness through a public awareness campaign. Well, this project will go through a training of trainers with groups of men and boys, which we hope at the end of the day would like to become facilitators to go out into the district to start doing community training. So we will be looking at a committed coalition of men and boys to carry the message forward to advance gender equality and to help prevent gender-based violence.
So speaking earlier with Kim on the initiatives of S-Clan and the Special Envoy for Women and Children, we spoke a lot about really ending the discrimination against women and children and how it is a collective effort. Now, in your role as Executive Director of S-Clan, tell us why it's so important to engage men and boys in these initiatives to be able to end the discrimination of women and end gender-based violence.
That's an excellent question, and I think that what is the gap that has been missing all of these years. We have focused on women and girls, which is the correct way to go, but we also need to incorporate men and boys in the discussion, because without them, it can't work. So what we are doing moving forward is focusing on men and boys, and then bringing in the women and girls as well. Gender-based violence is everybody's problem. Everybody needs to take a role. We all need to work together and end this problem as soon as we can. So when I say it's everybody's role, I want to ask everybody as well, what is their commitment today to end gender-based violence?
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful.
A woman's soul is the alpha of life. She goes beyond the duty of mother and wife. Her blood, her story, she the sacrifice, so that the nation remains not having to pay the price. Women worldwide are etched in history, shattering barriers despite adversity. But some rather keep the truth shrouded in mystery. Free spirits suppressed in this macho society. Their voices gone, transforming into objects, but these very same objects save many men from their nonsense. They say when you educate a woman, you educate a nation. Well, Malala paid the price for that education. With a bullet to the head, they left her for dead. I am Malala, I am Malala, I am Malala, the world chants instead. Maya Angelou, I know why the cage bird sings. Woman power, girl power is now a universal thing that every woman can be queen with or without a king. We just gotta let them fly, even with broken wings. Each woman the future, but we apply that to the present. We work in the now to enjoy the fruits of accomplishments. Our mothers, wives, sisters, daughters, and friends will forever be our heroines. Beb Smith got you to laugh and to make a whole pile of knives. Sarah and Doodle darling only can't imitate even if you try. Marie Sharp, her products are my choice. Her pepper got my rice and beans, it tastes nice. I stand on the foundation these women built, unmoved like Rosa Parks, her thought didn't spark. Rosa sat so that Martin could walk. Bear that in mind the next time you hear Dr. King talk. Rise in power to all my sisters who fought for my freedom, because without you, drivers of change, my life, this poem, will never be born.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, although COVID-19 prevents me sadly from being with you in person, I am delighted that through technology I am able to bring you greetings virtually from Jamaica on the occasion of the national launch of the Spotlight Initiative in Belize. I feel very connected to this important program being realized through a strategic partnership between the European Union and the United Nations, because it reflects our joint commitment to wipe out domestic violence perpetuated against women and girls globally, including in Belize. It is also a clear manifestation of our unwavering support to multilateralism, working with the UN to address common problems. In this case, providing support to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment by addressing those issues that stand in the way of realizing that goal. This includes domestic or family violence. With a total of 50 million euros allocated to address family violence across the Caribbean, Spotlight Initiative demonstrates just how serious we are about our partnership with the region and protecting the rights of the people of the Caribbean. It is a shame that women and girls continue to suffer one of the greatest injustices of our time, in the very space where they should feel safe and protected, the home. Last year in Belize, 1 in 5 women experienced physical or sexual violence at the hands of an intimate partner. In 2018, 75% of all cases of sexual violence were among girls 10 to 19 years old. 65% of children, boys and girls, experience some form of physical violence from a parent or guardian. This is simply unacceptable. Women shouldn't have to fear being in their own home. They have the right to freely play their part in the economic, social, and political development of their country without fear or intimidation. They have the right to pursue and realize their full potential. It is time for all of us who have been standing quietly on the sidelines to find our voice, to speak out and to take action to end violence once and for all, demonstrating to women and girls suffering in silence that they are not alone is a powerful way of empowering them. It is also a way of inspiring others. It is not only the right thing to do, it is the smart and humane thing to do. Violence against women and girls thrives in silence. In fact, it counts on your silence and mine to exist. And this is why this program is putting a spotlight on this appalling problem to help women and girls step out of the shadow of their abusers and into the light. It is important to highlight that this program is not only about women and girls. It seeks also to involve boys and men as partners in this struggle. It is an all-of-community approach which seeks to take on board influential persons within the communities, including religious leaders, traditional and indigenous leaders, teachers, and others. This is crucial to get the transformative change that we desire. With the COVID-19 crisis, we have witnessed globally an upsurge in cases of domestic and family violence as more women and children are forced into lockdown with their partners and abusers. This sad reality has highlighted the need for improved access to services so the abused can find help. The Spotlight program is sufficiently flexible to adapt to these changing circumstances, and we have encouraged our partners to adjust the program to facilitate increased access to relevant services. These include community-level health, psychosocial, sexual and reproductive health and legal support, mobile and hotline services for victims, and awareness building for the prevention of family violence. The capacity of national authorities to prepare for, coordinate and respond to family violence during the COVID-19 crisis will also be strengthened. Ending family violence need not be aspirational. It is very much possible. The Spotlight Initiative is boldly shining a light on this huge problem that threatens the lives and well-being of women and children and their ability to realize their full potential. But let's be clear, Change requires partnership. Partners from a wide cross-section of the society, government, civil society, private sector, and religious organizations have to join forces together. The time has come to leave abuse and family violence behind. I am proud that the United Nations and the European Union are playing a lead role in this effort. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Dear all, it is a real pleasure to join this virtual launch of the Spotlight Initiative in Belize. We hope all of you are taking good care and keeping safe in this time of uncertainty. We in the United Nations are very committed to supporting Belize's efforts to eliminate family and gender-based violence, as well as an advance on gender equality, especially at this moment, to make women and girls safe. It is a joint responsibility to make sure that we support constructive relationships among members of family while we continue providing women and children safe places if they find themselves confronted by violent situations. The support we are providing jointly with the European Union highlights leaving no one behind, especially when it comes to eliminating violence against women and children in all development efforts. Unfortunately, family violence, gender-based violence against women and children affect all groups in society. Some groups have more difficulties accessing information or services, and that is why we should do our utmost to reach women and girls in specific groups, such as migrants, asylum seekers, persons living with disabilities, or those belonging to indigenous people groups. To make sure this is addressed and recognizes the role of women's movement and human rights, having demanding violence is properly addressed from state and non-state actors. We are pursuing a strategic engagement with civil society organizations in the design, implementation, and monitoring of the program. We are very pleased to present today the National Civil Society Reference Group with 9 experienced members representing a variety of sectors, including the LGBTQ population, indigenous people, sex workers, and youth, in addition to women and girls. Through the program, we will support the development of policies and legislation, develop the capacity to deliver legal services to end impunity, and support community programs to change social norms that justify unacceptable behaviors. The Ministry of Human Development, the National Women Commission, the National Commission of Family and Children, among other national institutions, will be supported in all their efforts to fulfill Belize's responsibilities towards women and children. The program will also build alliances with the private sector and other non-state actors, as they are an important part of the change. Zero tolerance to gender-based violence in the workplace will only be possible with a strong commitment of leaders, men and women, to start making changes in every environment where women and men can establish equal relationships. Faith-based organizations are also important actors to amplify the messages and make sure the communities are changing social norms to make violence in families unacceptable. The Spotlight Initiative is an example of a strategic partnership with the European Union to continue enabling the collective response by the UN system. Working together is allowing us to cover existing gaps, ensure productive intersections, and identify new opportunities for delivering results more effectively and efficiently. The 3 recipient and UN entities, UNICEF, UNDP, and UNFPA, ensure a coherent response to gender-based violence and family violence, joining their strengths and complementing capacities. They will also collaborate with other entities in the UN, such as UN Women, PAHO, WHO, ILO, UNHCR, and OHCHR, to ensure different access areas are included. I want to express our recognition of all the efforts each agency is adding to this joint program, and the staff who are committed to making gender equality at the heart of the UN programs. women empowerment, children's rights, equal rights for LGBTQ must be central to all development efforts. I would like to end my intervention today by inviting others to join in this crucial partnership to end family violence. We all need to commit to ending violence at home, which particularly affects women and children, harming the whole society. In these times of pandemic, we all need to commit to active engagement, and we all need to continue delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals. Many thanks.
And of course, it is time for us to be able to check in a bit on what people are saying online. We want to thank you if you're just tuning in. This is Spotlight Initiative Goes Live. And we heard from a number of representatives talking about the Spotlight Initiative globally and, of course, bringing it home as to why it's important here and some of the things that we're really working to be able to improve on.
And the interesting thing about the presentations, it shows you how multi-layered this challenge of gender-based violence is, and what a multifaceted approach is being taken. And that is really refreshing, because I think there's so many angles that need to be addressed to make sure that we're doing the right things to move beyond just talk shop and a workshop to actually implementation and making the changes that are necessary.
Well, let's not forget, this is a public launch of the initiative, and you know, this is life in the times of COVID, so we're doing it online. And as we mentioned earlier, we are going to be sharing some of your feedback based on what you're saying under the live feed. Let's start off, of course, with Anne-Marie Williams saying that she is watching while she is working on Spotlight at the regional level. And, you know, we want to say thank you. And, of course, we can't wait to see where the Spotlight Initiative is going to take us.
And, of course, critical work that Anne-Marie does there in Guyana as a part of CARICOM and the work with women and gender. Mary Ganapol is watching from Tucson, Arizona. Such a distance, but we really appreciate your time to learn about women, about violence against women and girls, as well as family violence. We invite everyone worldwide to join us in eliminating these issues.
And Monley Aspinall, you know, Monley, you pointed out one of the things that I think is so critical about this program and that we should be able to discuss more, and that is that she loves the idea of involving men and boys. It is absolutely critical that we involve everyone.
And there was also a question about us and our masks. As we said at the top of the program, we are practicing safe social distancing in this regard, and we removed our masks then, but we want to encourage everyone to continue wearing their masks, practice safe social distancing, and practice all the safe hygiene practices that are encouraged, such as washing your hands very regularly and making sure that, you know, when it comes to your family, etc., you do all the right things to, if you're working outside the home, when you get home, please do all the right things to safeguard the health and well-being of your family.
So once again, of course, we will be checking in on our social media feedback. That's on the Government of Belize's live stream. That's on Facebook, and so we'll be pulling some of them and sharing it a bit later in the program. There's a lot that we want to get into, and we actually have a question here about how this will help children who were sexually assaulted and raped in Belize. The person notes that this is growing rapidly, especially in the villages. We do encourage you to stay tuned to the very end, because while we do have a number of recorded messages that are going to be aired at the end of the show, we're going to be having at the end of this event, we're going to be having a conversation with several representatives about the pillars behind Spotlight Initiative, diving into the details as to what they want to do and how they're going to do it. So questions like those will definitely be answered in the final panel discussion that we're having at the end of today's launch.
And it's important that you remain engaged. especially during this time of COVID, where we know that the challenges within the home can even be magnified, because you don't have that separation of going out to work or having the children go to school and being outside. Sometimes, you know, the tension within the home can be a little bit more of a challenge. So it's also one of those things to consider during this time as well.
You know, I think one of the critical things that we do know about Spotlight Initiative, and you'll be hearing more as the launch progresses, but it's based on 6 fundamental pillars. And one of those pillars I think is absolutely crucial, and that's looking at being able to get the data. We all hear anecdotally of persons who we know, or family members that we suspect, or friends oftentimes, who may have been impacted in some way by gender-based violence, by which includes sexual violence and abuse. And it is critical that we have a better picture as to what is happening out there. I mean, some of the statistics we were looking at, and we heard some of them quoted during the
scary statistics.
Yeah, during the presentations there. You're talking about 75% of sexual violence cases in Belize, it's against girls between ages 10 to 19 years old. And that's because, you know, that's just what's reported. Similar to domestic violence, we know that we have over 2,000 cases of domestic violence reported in 2018, and I believe in the year before as well. So data is going to be a critical point, but you'll be hearing much more about that.
For me, the one that stands out is definitely services. Very often within Belize, we worry more about confidentiality. And I think the almost one-stop shop kind of approach to make sure that you're able to access all the kinds of support that you need. It's very, very critical. And I particularly like the fact that time, effort, and resources are also being dedicated towards engaging men, because this is not a singular gender kind of issue. It means that both sides of the gender fence have to be engaged to make sure that it is not Venus against Mars or anything like that.
That's right. That's right. And when we talk about family violence, it encompasses all of that. You know, we definitely want to hear some of your feedback to some of the areas when you think of violence within Belize and violence within families. What are the areas that concern you the most, and where do you hope that initiatives like the Spotlight Initiative will be able to fill that gap? Share it with us so that we can share it with our panel at the closing part of our launch. But now we're shifting gears, and we are actually going to get moving into another crucial partner in all of this is looking at the civil societies that do their own work within their own individual institutions, and now will be a part of the collective effort under the Spotlight Initiative. So let's find out from some of the civil society organizations what they're doing and what they hope that Spotlight Initiative will be able to help with.
Three out of 4 children experience violence from caregivers before the age of 4. 1 out of 4 adults believe it is necessary.
75% of sexual violence cases in Belize are against girls between 10 to 19 years old.
65% of children, boys and girls, experience some form of physical violence from a parent or a guardian.
In 2018, Belize had over 2,000 reported domestic violence cases.
1 in 20 women in Belize
believe that man is justified to beat his wife.
1 in 10 females, 15 to 19 years, have had live births.
1 in 5 of our girls aged 15 are married or in a union.
Boys experience violence too. 17% of boys experience sexual violence.
1 in 5 women experience physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner in the last 12 months.
These alarming statistics shows the urgent need to end family violence, especially against women and children. Everyone has the right to live in a society free of violence. We cannot develop economically or socially if we continue to tolerate violence within our families. The government of Belize is committed to expanding and accelerating its efforts to bring about this change in our society. but the government cannot do it alone. Your help is needed to end violence against women and children. We all need to take a stand to end violence now.
End violence now.
I am Diana Shaw, and I am the Executive Director of the Child Development Foundation. We are headquartered in Belmopan City in the country of Belize. Our mission is to work on developing a community-based response to child abuse, human trafficking, and domestic violence. In Belize, the issue of family violence impacts all of us. It impacts our children, our women, and our men. CDF is committed to eradicating these issues and to develop and support strong families. We became a part of the Spotlight Initiative in 2019 when we submitted a proposal. Our proposal was focused on providing capacity building to community leaders, especially community leaders involved in faith-based organizations, and also to provide psychosocial support to persons who were impacted by family violence. One of the key activities that we will be doing under this project is to develop a toolkit for family violence. It will equip community leaders to be able to train others within the community and how to identify and how to address family violence issues within the context of the community in a way that is gender sensitive and also culturally appropriate. Since we have become a part of the Spotlight Initiative, we have seen that this initiative has the potential to change the dynamics of family violence in our communities. It will help us to have the cultural and the underlying issues that cause family violence in communities, in settings involving school, and also to strengthen our community leaders to provide a more supportive and enabling environment for women, for girls, for boys, and for men. We are pleased to be a part of this project, and we expect that with the outcomes communities will be safer for our girls, for our women, for our boys, and for our men. We are thankful for the work that UNICEF is doing for this, and we are proud to be a part of this mission.
It's hard to ignore the level of violence in Belize, especially on youth.
This has a clear impact on the country as a whole, but more specifically, the persons who have been exposed to it.
Exposure to family violence can be traumatic and can negatively impact many factors, such as development, academic performance, coping skills, and relationships. For many youth, this is not a choice.
Violence against women and girls also constitutes a grave violation of human rights and remain one of the greatest challenges in achieving gender equality.
Girls and young women are particularly vulnerable to various forms of violence, which leaves deep and long-term impacts on their lives, stifling their potential to grow, lead, prosper, and thrive.
Some children lose the ability to feel empathy for others. Others feel socially isolated, unable to make friends as easily due to social discomfort or confusion over what is acceptable.
In order to respond to the overwhelming issues associated with domestic violence, it is important to understand these issues and know how to identify them.
Youth engagement and leadership is imperative for accelerating and sustaining progress on preventing and ending violence against women and girls.
Prevention must start early in life through promoting respectful relationships and transforming the social norms in which gender-based violence and family violence is rooted.
In particular, engaging young men and boys in the prevention of violence towards young women and girls is critical.
If we want to bring sound changes to the future, we better engage the youth now.
Together, we can work towards creating a generation of empowered youth and support the change we need to create a better tomorrow.
It's all on you.
Hi everybody. Domestic violence impacts us all. It makes no distinction between age, ethnicity, or creed. Of the victims of domestic violence in our country, almost 3 out of every 4 are women. 1 in 3 women over 25 have suffered some form of physical violence. This is not only wrong, but a violation of one of our fundamental rights as Belizeans, our freedom from fear. We should all understand that everyone is a victim of domestic violence. But for women who are beaten and abused, they are being robbed of their dignity, security, and more so, they face tremendous threats to their health and safety. For this reason, we in the PUP are strongly opposed to any form of domestic violence, but in particular against women and children. Our Plan Belize agenda will commit to do everything in our power to uphold the law and to defend the right of our women to be free from violence and abuse. Our women's agenda will celebrate what previous PUP administrations have done to protect women. Initiatives like passing significant legislative changes to make tougher sentences for those who commit violence against women, the establishment of a special court to address issues relating to the family, and providing support to NGO organizations that work directly with women's issues. Now we must go further. This is why we commit to working with stakeholders like UN Women, UNDP, and other social partners in development that seek to promote equality and to end violence in all its forms. Today we join the Spotlight Initiative and pledge to work with you in contributing to ending family violence by strengthening policy and legislation that will guarantee increased protection of women and girls. Yes, all acts of violence go against our values, but domestic violence is worse, for it is dehumanizing and goes against decency. This goes against our most fundamental ideals. So we all have a responsibility to try to end this grave problem. Our pledge is that we will work hard to build the progress made so far and improve domestic violence prevention and response efforts. We will do more to reach people seeking help, and we will ensure that the workplace for women are safer and that our women earn equal pay for equal work. For we are convinced that this is an important part of building a Belize that works for everyone, and we believe that everybody will win.
Around the world, violence against women is considered a major violation of a woman's human rights. Belize also recognizes this and have signed on to several international commitments and instruments. The complexity of this issue lies in the multiple ways in which women and girls experience violence, in the many contexts in which it occurs, and the costs and consequences it brings with it. Family violence as a form of gender-based violence permeates every corner of society with effects that have direct and indirect costs that many times cannot even be measured. As such, family violence can no longer be considered as a private matter. We must understand that economic and social development cannot coexist with family violence because it undermines the social values and structure with additional effects on the entire economy due to the monetary losses resulting from this violence. The Ministry of Human Development is committed to the continuing strengthening of the capacity of key service providers and institutions that are at the forefront of the national response to gender-based violence. The ministry continues to address and respond to the needs of families comprehensively through our various programs and services implemented through our 3 departments. However, it is generally understood that addressing all aspects of family violence need a coordinated, multi-sectorial response. These critical components of the response are facilitated by statutory bodies that falls under the ministry: the National Committee for Families and Children, the National Women's Commission, and the National Council on Aging. The work of these human rights entities complement and support the programmatic interventions implemented by both government and non-government stakeholders. The Spotlight initiative that we are launching today comes at a very good time. This multi-year partnership amongst the European Union, United Nations, the government of Belize aims to boost national effort and to end violence against women and girls through the implementation of activity under 6 key areas or pillars. It is a very welcome partnership, particularly as we navigate the economic and social fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. The challenges posed by this pandemic increasing the vulnerability of women and girls. It is therefore critically important that we continue on the path to strengthening our response to all forms of gender-based violence. The technical and financial support offered through this initiative, combined with the continued national effort, will ensure that we stay the course. Fellow Belizeans, ladies and gentlemen, in the final analysis, ending family violence, ending all forms of gender-based violence will not only take political will, institutional commitment and support from international partners and allies, it will also take individual commitment. We must, as a Belizean society, decide that together we will increase our actions and change negative behaviors and attitudes so that men and women, boys and girls can live in peace, particularly in the sanctity of their homes. Today, I make a clarion call for all who live within the borders of our beloved country to join us in our effort to make Belize violence-free. We all must recognize that national development plans are only an instrument by government. We need institutional and individual commitment to increase action and change attitudes for women and men to live in society that provides equal opportunity and respects all its members equally. This part must come from all Belizeans.
Violence against women and girls is an egregious human rights violation that affects families in all countries and cultures. It traumatizes and hinders children and young people in feeling loved and secured in their dignity and rights and in achieving their full potential. Dealing with multiple issues and identities is part of eliminating violence against women and girls. The work demands that we identify gender biases which promotes marginalization and undermines the gender equality and empowerment efforts. It is a prerequisite for achieving the 2030 Agenda.
For decades, women's movements have been at the forefront of the fight to eliminate violence and harmful practices against women and girls across the globe. In Belize, their work and advocacy to eliminate violence and harmful practices against women and girls has contributed to changes such as Belize adopting the Domestic Violence Act, and later on the Belize Police Department established its Domestic Violence Unit. Their expertise spans all the outcomes of the Spotlight Initiative's comprehensive theory of change, supporting the implementation of laws, policies, and interventions in order to prohibit, prevent, and sanction all forms of violence against women and girls, tackling impunity, ensuring timely, adequate, and high-quality multi-sectorial services for survivors.
Educating women and girls on their rights, as well as men and boys on the harmful consequences of traditional notion of masculinity, addressing social and cultural norms that perpetuate and enable discrimination, ensuring accurate, reliable, and meaningful data on all forms of violence against women and girls, and building alliances, movements, and solidarity across the country and the world to eliminate violence against women and girls and advance progress on gender equity, equality, and women's empowerment more broadly.
The Spotlight Initiative intends to work closely with women's movements and relevant human rights-based civil society organizations on the implementation of the initiative in the country of Belize in a mutually supportive and beneficial way, deploying and building upon our vast knowledge and experience developed at community, national, regional, and global levels.
To this end, the initiative has established a civil society national reference group in Belize as an institutional mechanism to harness civil society expertise, to advise the Spotlight Country program, and to advocate and partner for the realization of its objectives.
Let's be sure to leave no one behind. Let's stand with her.
Gender-based violence is experienced worldwide in both the public and the private spaces, but mostly within the confines of the family. So when responding to gender-based violence, Belize is also responding to family violence. Over the years, the government of Belize has implemented multiple strategies and initiatives to address family violence, such as the development of the national and district gender-based violence committees, which provide oversight, coordination, and monitoring for the response at the national level. These committees also bring together multiple stakeholders such as police, human development, health, education, as well as representation from civil society. One of the most recent initiatives was streamlining the roles and responsibilities of the National Women's Commission and the Women and Family Support Department to ensure that one focuses more at the policy development and recommendations to government, while the other one focuses as programmatic efforts. The most important aspect of a government response to family violence is its multi-sectoral approach, ensuring that multiple levels provide services to clients and survivors of family violence.
Some of the initiatives that have been undertaken for the police officers to work with the family violence is that we have established family violence unit throughout the country at the police stations. We have also developed capacity building and for strengthening our officers in terms of educating them on gender-based violence. We have developed a curriculum component for officers at the National Police Training Academy. We have trained specific officers to deal with gender-based violence with the Crimes Information Management System, and also for them to send their information to assist with the Joint Intelligence Coordinating Center. We have also assisted in educating other persons through community policing outreach programs for young people to understand what is gender-based violence.
Over the years, government has taken a lot of initiatives. One, looking at drafting legislation as it relates to domestic violence. They've put in place what we call our FamCare, which is an online case management system that allows us to track cases from start to finish. I think one of the biggest initiatives, though, was amalgamating the Women's Department and the Family Support Services to form the Women and Family Support Department, which sort of strengthens the case management response or the support to women in domestic violence situations. Also, there was much work done with some of the safe houses to look at strengthening the services, helping them put together policies and structures for these shelters.
Belize have a gender-based violence surveillance system which started in the year 2000, and it involved all the different service providers to survivors of gender-based violence. We have one form that is standardized, that is used by all agencies to help us to provide continuum of care to survivors. In the response for gender-based violence, we also include the community health workers, because in their training curriculum, we include aspects of sexual and reproductive health, which also covers topics on gender-based violence. So they would be probably the first contact between the health system and the survivors requiring services. The gender-based violence also is included in the sexual and reproductive health policy, which was approved in 2002 and is currently under revision.
The Department of Youth Services sees the family structure as a gateway to effective and productive young people if built properly. Hence, we engage in mentorship programs that teach on conflict mediation and capacity building. We also have a host of youth officers nationwide attached to counselors that assist with life skills training in the classroom. And of course, we have our health and well-being unit and community outreach unit that look at anti-violence and positive mental health.
Some of the areas that will benefit as a result of the Spotlight Initiative's 6 pillars will be legislation and institutional training, as well as strengthened monitoring and evaluation mechanisms that support data-driven programs, services and actions that promote norms and values against violence, and of course, capacity building of both state and non-state actors. The evaluation of the National Gender Policy and the National Gender-Based Violence Action Plan will allow Belize to assess how well both these policy documents have been implemented, as well as provide recommendations on the best way forward to address the gaps and challenges that still exist. Additionally, the engagement of men as advocates in the work against violence will bring great benefit to Belize and families.
The Spotlight initiative will greatly assist the ministry in the sense that the officers will be more sensitized to be able to deal with human rights, as well as to develop their standards and their obligations, their gender and family violence, to help with attitudinal changes within the Belize Police Department.
So in addition, the Spotlight Initiative looks at the definition of essential services packages and defining what that is to respond to gender-based violence, and also looking at essential service packages not only in normal times but also in disaster management times or emergency situations.
We are looking at strengthening the gender-based violence surveillance system. We are looking at improving the access to information and services by families that will help them to reduce the number of teen pregnancies. These problems that we are dealing with are social problems, hence they need a social response. They need the response from the society as a whole.
Well, the Spotlight Project will support initiatives through a scale-up of high-quality education of sexual and reproductive health, of course, through our online platforms that will distribute accessible information for sexual and reproductive health and rights, and of course, for the implementation of social and behavioral change programs through art, music, and entertainment that will build on our art program as well as our music studio.
Addressing family violence is extremely important because it is so widespread and for many years socially accepted. However, government should not be the only one working in transforming social, cultural, and economic obstacles that hinder families from living lives free of violence. Everyone must play a role.
And welcome back. Of course, we've had more messages of very positive, support for this Spotlight initiative as we go live.
Absolutely, and hearing the level of commitment from political representatives to the different NGOs, I think is really such an encouraging message. And of course, there you saw some of the statistics in terms of what the picture is for us here in Belize.
And very, very scary when you look at it, because I think at the surface, we'd think that this does not exist because no one talks about it. It's such a silent culture. Yeah. And that's a part of the culture that we definitely have to address, to get people to talk up and talk out and seek the support that they need. Yeah. It happens to everyone, or could happen to anyone, regardless of your color, your race, your
socioeconomic status, your religious background, whether you live in a rural community, whether you live in an urban community. The fact of the matter is that it can literally affect any family. I think one of the interesting things, and we just saw that video where even looking now at the situation of the pandemic, and COVID-19 has really just uprooted all of our lives at this point, but it has also created a very concerning situation for women and girls within the home as well. So it's always important to make use of the opportunities that we do have to tell people that if they want to get out of an abusive situation, as you saw just now in the ad, you can always contact the police if it's an emergency, if your life is being immediately threatened. You can also contact the Women's Department. You can call 0800-WAY-OUT, or you can also call 672-9628. Text them, call them, let them know you need help, let them know you want out, and save yourself and your loved ones.
And don't stay in because of the children, because they become the ultimate victims and run the risk of continuing the cycle as they become adults themselves. So your tolerance is something that is not good for the children. Think about it as an act that you have to show zero tolerance for, and because you love your children, you have to find a way out and move on and show your children how resilient you can be as you help them build a better future.
That's right. Now, before we move into the meat of today's launch, where we're going to close off with a panel discussion with several representatives, we do have a bit of entertainment lined up for you.
That's right. We'll go to the Bliss Center for Performing Arts, and we'll see a special pre-recorded performance by the Belize National Dance Company.
Salamana Rutukutunku Tunku, Rutukutunku, Salamania, Salama Rutukutunku, Salamania, Salama Rutukutunku, Salamania.
Thank you very much, Belize National Dance Company. We're now back live in studio and we're about to embark on our panel discussion. We welcome to the studio via Zoom Judith Alpuche, Chief Executive Officer, Ministry of Human Development, Social Transformation and Poverty Alleviation.
We also welcome Ambassador Malgorzata Vasilevska, delegation of the European Union to Jamaica, Belize, Turks and Caicos Islands, Bahamas, and the Cayman Islands.
We also have Vijit Gerstenberg, United Nations Resident Coordinator for Belize and El Salvador.
And Michelle Irving, a member of the Civil Society Reference Group for the Spotlight Initiative here in Belize. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You've been tuning in to the launch. Let's start off just by having a very simple question as to what are your thoughts so far and why this launch is such an important undertaking? Don't jump in at once, please.
we're all being polite and waiting for you to tell us the order. So let me jump in.
Yes.
Yes, it's been very it's been surprising because despite the fact that it's virtual, it's been high energy. Very well done. I think it's gratifying for me to see because it's something that we have been trying to make happen, the launch of this initiative through all the complexities of COVID, etc. So it's very well done. I really want to congratulate all the people behind the scenes who have made this happen. It's good to see all the players coming together.
Now, CEO, I'd like to start off with a question from you, looking with a response from you, that is, one of the things that, of course, we all want to understand is that when we look at what currently exists in the country when it comes to gender-based violence and what we know so far, there are many different entities, government and non-governmental agencies, already working to somehow make a difference in this area. How is the Spotlight Initiative going to make a difference in what currently exists on the ground?
The Spotlight Initiative, I predict is going to make a huge difference in terms of really helping us to broaden and deepen the services, the actions that we're currently undertaking. As you heard throughout the various presentations, particularly by the government stakeholder entities, quite a bit of work has been done, and it's not only been with revenue or support from the government and from key civil society partners, but we've also benefited from other initiatives such as BA1 initiative that was a regional one for the Sika region that dealt with gender-based violence. We've benefited from UN funding in the past, and as an ongoing matter with our relationships with UNFPA and UNICEF and the various UN Women and the various entities. But what Spotlight does is really help us in a distilled way, in a concentrated, focused way, to deepen and broaden what we have been doing. There is a lot of harmonization between those 6 pillars that you see within Spotlight that has been talked about throughout this launch, and what is in our national plans. Our National Gender-Based Violence Action Plan, what is even in our National Gender Policy. There is a lot of harmonization and synergy between what's there and what Spotlight will be addressing. So I find it quite exciting in terms of the possibilities. And I think that one of the things too that Spotlight brings, it brings to bear in a concerted way the full technical expertise of the UN, along with the backing of the European Union. So it brings everybody on the same proverbial hymn sheet. Yeah. We've been working with, although it's all interconnected, various entities working with UNFPA on something, and UNICEF on something, and UN Women on something, but this really harnesses everything and provides an excellent framework. And so I think that's going to be the major difference that has the potential to catapult us forward.
Now, CEO Alpuche, one of the things that very often is a challenge for us is that you don't want to create parallel structures that are doing the same thing. How important is it, and in terms of opportunities that will be created, how can you see this project or this initiative offering support to the work of government to effectively implement legislation that combats violence when it is such a deep-rooted and pervasive challenge? Sorry, as you continue with the work that you do so passionately.
Belize has a pretty decent legislative framework when it comes to gender-based violence. It's one thing that we do pretty well. There are some issues that we need to address legislatively that is on within the plans for the Spotlight initiative, having to do with the Evidence Act, having to do with other minor pieces of legislation. But it's really in the implementation, no? Because it's really about those laws that have been passed by the National Assembly coming to life and offering real protection for people rather than just being paper tigers. And so within the Spotlight initiative, there's due attention being paid to capacity building, capacity assessments for the various stakeholder agencies, government and non-government, in their ability to carry out their work and bring into force, bring to life the laws and help people to access the various protections that are offered within the provisions of the laws. The training that is necessary, which is an ongoing issue. We have to continue to train the various stakeholders, continue to sensitize parliamentarians, that sort of thing. And I think that is of incredible value when it comes to really ensuring that the legislative framework works, that it makes a difference in the lives of people.
So thank you very much for that, CEO. Let's shift over now to the UN Resident Coordinator and get the perspective in terms of the United Nations role in this initiative, and also taking a look at how Belize fits in globally in being able to work towards eliminating violence against women and girls.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the United Nations have always worked and are working every day more by mandate, with a strong focus on women and their rights. Nonetheless, studies have shown that well-designed and comprehensive programs that reach the most marginalized women and girls can be effective in eliminating violence. So this program makes for us a big difference in terms of having the resources and the focus just on gender-based violence in its different forms, how it is presented, especially also in Belize. No? Yes. And each Spotlight Initiative country program is purposefully designed to address all of it comprehensively, strengthening institutions, targeting gaps in legislation, promoting attitudes at the citizen level, provide quality service, prevention, but as well as really strengthening the women's organizations and their families as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. I'll switch now to Michelle Irving, just to ask a question about you are working on the ground, definitely involved in your community. What are the social norms, attitudes, and behavior changes that you can, that need to be done but are completely challenging, and in terms of work that you will have to engage in, what kind of timeline do you see this happening? Because very often people think that it has to be results, and you have your indicators that you have to achieve. So what are your views on the attitudes?
Thanks very much for your question, William, and it is indeed a pleasure for me to be here along with these distinguished ladies who, like work, have been involved in making a change in our society and our world. Thank you very much for the work that you do. For me, representing a community-based organization, POWER, I think it's all about what your perspectives are. When we talk about social norms, when we talk about attitudes, behavior change, a lot of times we feel that we could accomplish that in the life of a project. And projects really are not for that. They are to put an amount of energy, amount of technical resources, amount of financial resources, amount of reconfiguring, filling the gaps. But really and truly, these issues are lifelong. And so while we have to be cognizant of that, while we have indicators, while we have, outputs and outcomes, but we also have to understand that we have to work along a continuum to ensure that even at how I'm working at this age, we are involving younger people, we are involving girls who are then becoming women, who are then becoming advocates, who are then continuing to push it forward. So in my life, I've looked at people, I have mentored, people have mentored me that have passed on, or some of them are a bit older. I am here doing this work, and I have a commitment to mentor others to ensure that then the work continues. And I think that's the way we have to look at it. While we appreciate and understand what this program is doing, for example, for us, we are ensuring in our work, we're ensuring training of gender advocates to ensure that people are more aware and very sensitive of the issues and what it might take, and having a client-centered approach, putting all your being in that girl who have been raped, or that woman who is living through violence and what she's going through, or that young boy who is uncertain of what is happening in his home and is looking to other outside for validation and things like that. So I believe that it is along the continuum, and so we continue to ensure that social norms and behavior change, while it may take a while for some of the things that we see or that we want to see, we have to also understand that it happens continuously every day. And it's just how we look at it. And so if we look at it from a point of inclusion and support, as opposed to exclusion and judgment, then I think we will be at a better place. I'll give one small example. Let's say teenage pregnancy. Everybody might say we work with women and girls on sexual and reproductive health and rights, and especially where the girls are concerned. Now and again, we have a teenage pregnancy. While at the beginning we are frustrated, we're a little disappointed, but then we realize that, life continues, hope is there, and this is how we look at it. So we will not exclude girls coming to the programs with their children. We'll find a way how to ensure that their children are taken care of, they're still a part of the program, and they are fully supported. So at the end of the day, we're not only supporting the girl, but then we're also supporting the girl and the child or their children, So it is how we look at it and where we choose to put our energies. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very powerful intervention, because I think the fact that you talk about judgment and trying to look at society as not perfect beings, but as work in progress. And I think that's very important for people to recognize. Marlene, your next question.
I wanted to talk with Ambassador Wasilewska. Good to see you, and thank you for joining in the conversation. I think one of the interesting observations is that while Spotlight Initiative is a global initiative, individual regions have been able to focus on where they see the greatest priority. I think they mentioned Latin America is looking at femicide, and for the Caribbean, we're talking about family violence, not just looking at specifically amongst spouses, but you're looking at everyone who is involved in the family. Looking at your role and your involvement in the Caribbean, what do you think is part of the reason why this has come out as our priority area? We're not hearing you. Did you unmute your mic?
There you are. I was trying to eliminate the noise. Thank you very much for your question, Marlene, and thank you for this opportunity. May I just take 1 minute to refer to the question that William posed to all of us at the beginning, and we were too shy to speak, why we're most excited about. So I am excited about the launch of this program today in Belize for many reasons. First of all, because we fought very hard to make sure that the region got adequate allocation. From the 500 million euro that were allocated globally, the region got 50 million euro, which per capita is quite large. And on top of that, because I'm also accredited to Belize, Belize got 3 million out, which again, per capita is a very generous allocation. So I'm thrilled that I'm still here at the end of my posting at the end of this month, that I have the opportunity to be part of this launch. I would have liked it to be in person, but on the other hand, I'm delighted that COVID hasn't delayed us so significantly that we're going ahead in this manner, and I'm sure they will come when we will meet, and I'll get a chance to come back to Belize even if I'm not an ambassador anymore. So Belize, it's very important that Belize is part of this program because not every country in the region received allocation. It's only Belize, Grenada, Guyana, Haiti, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. Even though the issue of family violence is a much bigger problem in the region. So why do I think family violence was identified by the region itself as the main focus? Because it's very complex here. And I can only speak as a visitor and as an observer. You yourselves live in the countries of the region and you know this much better, and other colleagues like Michelle work here much longer than I do. But I think it's a very complex problem in common to many countries. And I am very thrilled that it's family violence focused because it's bigger than the violence against girls and women. There's a level of acceptance of violence in the family, in the community, that goes beyond what is good for individual development, for respect of human rights, for the kind of lives that families should, and communities and schools and churches and society should secure for children. And it's starting to change. Lead violence has multiple facets. It is physical violence, it is sexual violence, it's social violence, it's economic, psychological, and emotional abuse, and acts of aggression within relationships within family that are that should not be accepted. And very often, members of the community know very well what is happening and where, but it's the community that often, on top of the family, put a pressure on people to keep the dignity of the family and the dignity of the community intact. And that silence has to be broken because it destroys people. It destroys children, it destroys boys, it destroys girls, it destroys women, and they grow up to be adults that have no sense of their own value, of their own self-respect, often grow up broken. Many perpetuate violence or feel so angry and upset and depressed. And you can just multiply this in many ways. So I think the leaders of the region very correctly identified this as a social problem, as a human rights problem, which undermines human development, economic development, rights of children, rights of women, rights of men are also, that undermines growth of the society. So it's very, very important that we help, together with the whole UN family, supporting the expertise that UN brings to the table, supporting the work of the government, because many good initiatives are already there, and it's an all-government approach, it's an all-society approach, civil society organizations, community leaders, churches, private sector, everybody has to be involved if we want to start making a lasting difference.
Yes. Thank you so much for that, Ambassador. And I think one of the points that you made is one that is a hard reality for us to be able to grasp at times. And I wanted to shift that into talking about one of the specific pillars. So one of the 6 pillars for the Spotlight Initiative is looking at data. And when we already have that coupled with a culture where there is a level of acceptance in some forms of violence, it leads us to believe that being able to collect that data, or even being able to use the data that we have right now, that it may not be painting the whole picture as to what people are experiencing in terms of family violence in Belize. How do you hope that the Spotlight Initiative will be able to change that? And I'll pose it to CEO, but of course anybody who wants to chime in can go ahead and jump in.
So I will start, but my colleagues are much better placed to speak into this point. I will just say that this was one of the biggest challenges when there was a discussion between UN family and ourselves on which countries should be selected, because it was based on data that was available on the levels of violence that exist in the country, as well as the capacity of government and civil society to address those issues. And the data simply wasn't there. Yeah. So from the work that we do collectively with UN and civil society organizations, we knew that the problem is much bigger than the available data, because the violence and the abuse is grossly underreported for reasons that we all know. As I said, families, communities put pressure on children, on women to not report. There's also a lack of adequate services. There are examples of police and other services not responding to those who want to report adequately, so on. So the reason why the data is not adequate is complex. And I will let my colleagues speak to why it's not reliable and what efforts we'll make to make sure that it's better.
Mm-hmm. So who wants to take it there? CEO, Michelle? Because it's interesting, we do have some data. We have what's reported, we do know what I'm sure your human development officers have experienced. And then Michelle, you kind of get the tail end of it when people may or may not have reported and you're working with them through your empowerment groups. But how important is it that we get the right snapshot as to where we are? Family violence is private, it's in the homes, it's parent to child amongst each other. And we just don't know what the extent that it happens. CEO,
microphone.
I think you're muted. Yeah.
See, trying to ensure that I don't Anyway, I think that of course, it's critically important. The data is very important for us to be able to measure what we're doing, as well as to be able to make evidence-based decisions. You know, when you have few resources, you really need to know where you're going to invest them so that you can get bang for your buck. And you know, having a feeling or a sentiment is not necessarily the most efficient way to go. We do have, I think our challenge is around the coordination of data. It's around, you know, translating administrative data into usable forms in a timely way. So everybody collects their information on their various cases, etc., reported cases. So the courts will tell you with some difficulty how many protection orders, you know, the police, human development can do the same. The Ministry of Health, the CSOs, but it's really about how do we have this data collated in a way that's usable and timely, and making sure that we're all speaking the same language in terms of definitions that we use, etc., and so forth. So I think that it's going to be useful to focus on the whole issue of data collection, monitoring and evaluation, building capacity, because some of it is around that in terms of really having the technical capacity at hand to be able to do the kind of analysis and the kind of work that's needed to make the numbers make sense, make the statistics make sense. So that is a welcome part of the whole equation, a welcome pillar within this whole initiative. And I think you know, it's recognized by all that, and there are some nascent pieces there within the system that we can really come together, bring together, and make sure that all the pieces work. We have had a gender-based violence surveillance system, you know, so there are some good bones there that we really have to make sure all the pieces are connected and that it works.
Any other comments from the panel?
Yes, I would like to agree with what CEO Alpucha said, but I would just like to offer maybe some views as a CSO on the ground and speaking with other CSOs where some gaps may exist in terms of how do CSO or NGOs or environmental organizations, community organizations, even maybe churches, how do they feed data up into the national body? Because a lot of times where the collection points are probably where service points are, maybe the police, the courts, the Ministry of Health. However, I think that a huge, or at least maybe not huge, but some reporting is done at the community level where people would tell community workers, outreach officers, people that they see as their peer. So there's that peer-to-peer reporting that, but they wouldn't report it to the police, to the court, maybe to any official government agency. How do we then, so that's like an informal talking of what is, or maybe on your chest, saying what is happening in your family, where do I go to for help? It might take a long time before that person muster up the strength because they don't want to interact with some of the, because there's also that hesitation sometimes to interact with the formal agencies, what might happen to them. Some people might feel that, you know, they have a preconceived notion of what the police will want them to do, what the court will want them to do, what human development will do to them if they go. And so there is that kind of, I would want to say, semi-mistrust or not sure. And so how do we then in the community, how do we strengthen the community understanding, the reporting? How do we feed up even in organizations that are not working on social issues, that may be working on environmental issues, that might be working on other issues that are in the community? So that is also, I see that as a way how we could broaden the data collection and close some of the gaps that may exist.
Now, we're almost completely out of time, but I want to pose one question, kind of rapid fire kind of response from our panelists, because as a male, what is the role that you see males playing in this entire initiative?
You are rapid firing there. Elami, you want us to rapid fire? And so let me go and just rapid fire back at you there. When we look at where we see that majority of the cases of family violence are against women and girls that are rooted in inequality, especially as it relates to gender and power and control issues. And so I feel that men and boys, in looking at the issues of gender socialization, equality, equity, and this is not only at the family level, but it should also be reflected in all our national systems so that we could ensure we can say to our girls, they are just as valued as boys are. Boys are valued, girls are valued. We need boys, we need girls to be able to have a productive society. We need all the members, especially in our small societies, small economies. We need everybody to be able to be up to their full potential, to work, to contribute, and to feel that they're needed and that they're valued. So I feel that men could play a role in ensuring that they say to other men, you know, this is not the behavior, this is not the way we're supposed to be. We're supposed to value each other, respect each other, and come together, ensuring that we are all doing what we need to do to be protecting each other, to be supporting each other, to be valuing each other. So I believe from that perspective, I think that men would need to come and man up, so to speak, no? And be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem. At this point, I'm sorry to say this, but more of them are a part of the problem than the solution.
But from what we hear and from what we've seen in our messages, there is definitely an urge or a drive to be able to include both men and boys in the conversation in being able to address the issue of family violence. As we rapidly run out of time, I just want to be able to say that you have 6 pillars that are the foundation for Spotlight Initiative. You're looking at laws and policies, you're looking at prevention, you're looking at services, you're looking at the strengthening of the institutions itself, the data, of course, and empowerment. So as we've spoken about how much money, and we are able to say that at least for 3 years, this is the commitment that both CSOs and government, with the support of the United Nations, and of course funded by the European Union, that this will be a collective goal. 3 years from now, what's going to be the difference for a Belizean family?
Hopefully, and William, this responds a little bit to what you can do. Be a role model, have conversations at every opportunity, use the prominent place that you have in society to have these kind of conversations. Media have to play a crucial role. Invite victims, invite people from different sections of society to continue these conversations. It does not go off just because we have a launch or just because we're going to be finishing the project. Hopefully in 3 years' time, an average Belizean family will understand much better what human rights they have, what is right, what is wrong, that psychological abuse, demeaning children or each other, that physical punishment that is excessive are not acceptable, and they will know where to go, who to speak to, and where to look for assistance so that they don't grow up as broken human beings. I'll stop there because I know we're running out of time.
I know. And that is a goal I think that we can all collectively say that we want to see be realized. Thank you so much for this very short, but at least we were able to get some points in about today's momentous occasion. Spotlight Initiative goes live and officially, the work has started and continues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, we've come to the end of the launch of Spotlight Initiative Goes Live. Thank you very much for tuning in, and remember, there'll be a repeat on various stations, and you can always catch it on Channel 7 on Sunday at 10, and you can also catch it on social media. Go share it with your friends and let that be a part of your input as you spark conversations among your friends.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just the beginning. This is the launch. So go ahead, visit the United Nations Belize's Facebook page. You can see a lot of the material there. You have a part to play as well if we want to make a change and see a difference in terms of the situation of violence within families in Belize. Thank you so much for joining us on this launch. And we do hope that you have a great afternoon, good evening, and stay safe, of course. Social distance, face masks, hand washing, keep on doing it, and let's all try to keep each other safe. Thank you.